Fume hoods are one of the most common pieces of laboratory equipment used to contain hazards. They protect laboratory workers from vapors, toxic materials, and other hazards. Vapors from the laboratory are pulled in through the fume hood and exhausted out the ductwork. Not using a fume hood properly can put laboratory workers at risk. When working in a fume hood, you want to be familiar with all of the working parts. Most fume hoods look like a giant box with a large window called a sash that can be raised and lowered. Some fume hoods also have horizontal sashes that open from side to side. The airfoil is located along the bottom edge of the fume hood and helps to streamline air into the fume hood. The work surface is where the researcher will be conducting their work. The exhaust and the baffles are located at the top and back of the fume hood, and they help the air to flow properly and exhaust through the ductwork. When you approach the fume hood to work, you should always check the flow monitor. All fume hoods are equipped with a flow monitor to ensure that air is flowing properly into the fume hood. If your fume hood is reading low flow, stop. Never ignore a low flow alarm, and always have your fume hood checked by either EHS or Facilities Engineering Planning to make sure that the fume hood has been certified as safe to use. The face velocity, or the airflow speed into the fume hood, should always be between 60 and 100 feet per minute, depending on the fume hood. If the face velocity is too high, it can cause airflow problems within the fume hood, causing toxins to be blown back out into the laboratory. So just as we warned of having a low flow, you also don't want to have a flow that's too high either. If your face velocity is reading over 110 feet per minute, contact EHS or Facilities Engineering and Planning to have your fume hood checked out. When working in the fume hood, raise the sash only as high as you need to access the work. In fact, the fume hood sash should be kept at or below the recommended working height as marked by an arrow on the side of the hood. The fume hood sash should only be fully open when setting up experiments. Once setup is complete, bring the sash back down to the recommended working height. Fume hood sashes should also be closed at the end of every day and when the fume hood is unattended in case of runaway reactions. It also helps to conserve energy. You should always place your experimental setup about 6 inches back from the airfoil. This allows for proper airflow into and around the fume hood. A line of tape about 6 inches back should help you visualize the placement for your experimental setups. Also, large equipment in the fume hood can block airflow. If large equipment must be used in the fume hood, raise it up off the floor of the hood. This allows for proper airflow into the fume hood. Use lap jacks or cinder blocks to raise the equipment up just a couple of inches to restore airflow in the hood. Do not use the fume hood to store chemicals and other laboratory items. See how these items block the airflow and in some cases even cause air to be pushed back into the laboratory? We can also show what happens to the airflow when you move too quickly into or out of the fume hood, or also see the effects of someone walking by. Never leave paper towels, chem wipes, or loose papers in the fume hood. These items can get caught in the exhaust plenum or in the baffles and cause damage to the hood. And as always, never put your head in the fume hood to look at your work or your products. Always keep your sash lowered to the recommended working height. Because fume hoods exhaust vapors, you may be tempted to dispose of your waste by allowing it to evaporate out into the hood. However, this is prohibited by the EPA and it's bad for the environment. As always, contact EHS to properly dispose of your waste. Fume hoods should be properly maintained in order to keep working effectively. They need to be inspected and certified at least once every 3 years. EHS coordinates this certification. Spills inside the fume hood should always be cleaned up immediately. If the fume hood stops working or if there's a power outage, stop work in the fume hood as soon as you safely can. Turn off all the equipment, close the sash, and leave the laboratory. Sometimes you'll want to designate a fume hood for working with certain items such as strong oxidizers like Piranha solutions, where you keep all of the organic materials out. Other times you'll want to designate a fume hood for use of hazardous materials when you want to contain the hazards to one specific area of the laboratory. Some materials are not suitable for use in a standard laboratory fume hood. This includes perchloric acid. Using perchloric acid in the hood can cause crystals to form in the ductwork, leading to a potential explosion. In order to use perchloric acid in the laboratory, a special washdown fume hood is required. Fume hood sashes can provide some protection against fires, runaway reactions, and explosions, even though this is not its primary function. If a reaction has the potential to cause an explosion, you should use a blast shield inside the fume hood as well. If a fire occurs in the fume hood that you cannot put out quickly by either covering it or putting it out with a fire extinguisher, close the fume hood sash, exit the laboratory, and pull the nearest fire alarm pull station as you exit the building. Then call Rice University Police Department at 713-348-6000 or dial 6000 from any on-campus phone. Biological safety cabinets, as well as glove boxes, have often been mistaken for fume hoods. These items cannot be used in place of a fume hood. They do not provide the directional airflow or exhaust to make them suitable for use with volatile materials. Working in a fume hood can provide protection against volatile or hazardous materials. However, you should still always wear your personal protective equipment, such as your eye protection, lab coat, and gloves when working in a fume hood. If you suspect that your laboratory hood is not working properly, do not hesitate to call EHS or FE&P to have it checked out.